Welcome to the Training Stimulus podcast. This is episode 1. So the plan today is a quick bit about me, what you can expect from this podcast, and why you might find it useful. So for those of you not familiar with me, my name is Ash Grossman. I am by trade a movement mechanics coach and mentor, and I've been lucky enough to work with some of the fittest athletes on the planet. And I've also mentored some world-class clinicians working in the training and rehab space as well. So how did I end up in that spot? My interest/obsession with movement, like most people who work in this industry, was born from my own injury frustrations. So when I was about 14, I suffered a neck and shoulder injury from playing rugby, kind of like whiplash symptoms. And I saw a physiotherapist, and basically for the next 10 years, I was bouncing around between different physiotherapists, but I saw everybody: chiropractors, osteopaths, I had MRIs, saw shoulder surgeons, and nobody could give me long-term relief. And I was very diligent with all the rehab prescriptions that were given to me. And after a while, I got a bit fed up of this injury, return to sport, reoccurrence of the injury cycle, which I think a lot of people can relate to. And I started looking for answers myself. So that led me down the rabbit hole of learning about training. I was already interested in sport and the gym from school anyway, but I took it to a whole new level when I was trying to find answers for this shoulder injury. And this was around 2010 when I was starting my corporate job. So I was basically sat in the office and not doing any work, just browsing secretly on the internet, learning about mobility and functional training, which was not really a thing back then. It was the very early days of CrossFit, and I stumbled across a website called Mobility WOD, which many of you will be familiar with, founded by Kelly Starrett, the Supple Leopard Man. And it opened my eyes to the fact that there was another way of looking at training, much less centered around bodybuilding and aesthetics, much more around function and performance. So this sowed the seed of an idea that there were people out there who could help with these biomechanical or movement pattern style injuries and issues, but the information obviously wasn't readily available. So a few years later, I decided that I wanted to make a career of it. And flash forward 15 years, here I am, having spent thousands of hours, thousands of pounds on education, doing mentorships with several world-class coaches, and tons of different education qualifications in personal training, functional therapy, strength, Olympic weightlifting, just to try and fully understand the problem of human movement and biomechanics. And that led me down a path primarily through CrossFit to work with some really cool athletes and coaches. And many of the people that I worked with one-on-one worked in the industry themselves, either as a coach, a trainer, or some sort of clinician, physio, osteo, chiro. And after having a session with me or being coached by me, they were curious to learn how I was going about it and started asking for some education or mentoring. So that was the seed of the Training Stimulus, which is now a business I'm very proud of, where we mentor trainers, coaches, and clinicians, so those physios, osteos, and chiros I was talking about, in the skill of identifying the root cause of an injury and using movement mechanics and training to train them back to the sport or training that they love, which is, I basically want to create an army of professionals who could have helped 14-year-old me with that neck and shoulder injury from rugby, so that I never had to think about it. I could just get back to sport without too much concern. So that's the sort of work side of things. The Training Stimulus mission, like I say, that's probably a soundbite I want to get out there, is that we want to help as many people and athletes as possible get back to the sport and training that they love. That's our mission, our purpose, what we want our dent in the world to be. and that will be a central focus of this podcast. Not only normal training, normal nutrition, everything like that, but a big focus on movement and helping people to perform at the highest level they would like to perform at. And obviously movement is a huge part of that. So a little bit more about me, which will probably give you a bit of context for my interests, which will also drive many of the episode's subjects. So I moved to Bali in 2023 and have been building a villa, which is where I am now. This will be the primary podcast studio. And this is also the reason why it's taken me longer than I would have liked to get the podcast going. There's been lots of challenges and delays. Maybe I'll do an episode about that for those who are interested. But yeah, we'll also be doing some guest expert sessions as well. So it'll be a mixture of solo ones with me here, and yeah, some in podcast studios around the world, hopefully. In terms of my own training, which is going to drive a lot of the topics and discussions for the podcast, I'm currently focusing on kickboxing and paddle tennis as my main sports. Paddle seems to be especially hot topic, trending sport at the moment. Apparently it's the fastest growing sport in the world, and we'll definitely do some podcast episodes on paddle because there's a lot to talk about, and I think there's probably a few of you listening who have at least a little bit of interest in it. And yeah, also gymming, obviously just doing enough to try and not get fat whilst I gorge on all the amazing food here in Bali. For the gym training itself, I focus on calisthenics and movement mechanics style strength work. So I'll dive deeper into that in another episode, but trying to practice what I preach as far as possible and keep it. The goal with the strength stuff is primarily to keep me feeling good playing those sports, kickboxing and paddle, and doing some running, but also secondary aesthetics, which are slipping as I get older and lazier, but doing what we can to stay on top of that. In terms of interests, I've also become a big MMA fan over the last few years. So after a lot of thought and consideration, I believe it to be the purest form of sport, which we have some episodes on, and I'll discuss why I think that, and we've got some great people to talk to about that as well. But I do appreciate all sports and athletic endeavors. I've got a soft spot for golf. I'm going on a trip shortly, and yeah, if you can win it, I'm probably interested in it, but we'll get a good feel for what sort of sports those might be later in the series. In terms of the goals of the podcast and what you can expect from it, it's pretty simple. We want to talk about thought-provoking or interesting topics, primarily focusing around training, injuries, movement mechanics, and coaching. This might mean things like the science of strength, myth-busting nutrition, health and longevity hacks, or sporting lessons that can help you win or that are very interesting that we can learn from high performers, those sorts of things. And like I say, it'll be a mixture of solo episodes and guest experts, some deep topics, some light and fun ones, and probably a few other random side quests into whatever I find interesting at the time. There's plenty of interesting people here in Bali, so you might see some of them pop up as guests. We've already recorded some great episodes with some great guests and solo topics, and there's more in the diary that I'm very excited to record and share. So if there is a topic or guest you'd like to see on the show, we'd love to hear about it. So please do let me know. You can either hit me up on Instagram at ashgrossman.coach, or you can email me on ash@thetrainingstimulus.com. But yeah, that's it for today, guys. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Hopefully there's a lot of value for you coming up in the next episodes. Please check out episode 2, which is also being launched today.